Alright, well, here we are again with another video, and I can just tell you right now, it's going to be a pretty epic video because it's the second day this week I've actually, done my hair and makeup, and I have a natural filter on my face from the sun, so I mean, how can it not be a great video? Seriously though, I'm going to go over the man in the well questions. You guys were assigned these last week. Obviously with this video being posted, if you have not completed the questions, you're not going to be able to complete them from this point on. So if you're in that boat, you need to email me and talk to me, and we'll have to work something out. Because obviously if the answers are posted, then that's not really going to be, fair for you to be able to go do them at that point. So I'm just going to go over all the questions. What I'm going to do in the description for the video, I will put a timestamp for each slide that reviews a new question, so that then if you don't want to watch, every single question, there's just one question that you are kind of curious about, you can just jump to that one and watch just that one. So hopefully you guys enjoy the story. Quite a few of you said you did. A lot of you were shocked by it. It is an absolutely messed up story. It's crazy, but hopefully you had some kind of reaction to it. I mean, that's the beauty of literature. It doesn't matter, if the reaction's good or bad, it's still a reaction. That's what we look for. Okay, so I'm going to go over the after reading questions. Those are the 10 questions at the bottom of the document after the story that you had read. It was a score out of 50, 5 points for each question. The most common ways that people lost points was you did not answer the questions in complete sentences, or you did not elaborate and use details to explain yourself enough. You did not answer all the questions. Those are the 3 most common, and the 4th one, you didn't answer the question correctly. So those are the most common ways that people lost points. I did not go and put comments beside every single question. I put some comments off to the side when I gave you your score. I'm just kind of telling you overall where some of your points came off, and then you can watch this video and then kind of compare your answers to what I'm putting up here. All right, question number 1. What are your initial thoughts, reactions, and questions to this story? Well, it's your opinion. All right, there's not a right or wrong answer. And all you had to do was tell me what you thought about the story. A question that had come up when you were reading the story. Anything. I took it. Some common things I read were, it was weird. Yes, it's a very weird story. I'm shocked. Why would they do this? Why would they leave the man in the well? Why didn't they help him? All those common ones. It was sad when they did this. This poor man's left in the well to, die. That's sad. So these are common things that people had wrote. Whatever your reaction was, it didn't matter. You just had to tell me, and that's how you got your points for this question. Okay, this should say number 2. I will fix that before I post the PowerPoint. Unfortunately, I won't fix it in the video because then that means I have to go start all over again, and that's a lot. So, number 2, who has the power in this story, and at what point do they lose some of their power? So, most of you actually did very, very well on this question. I was very impressed. Either said Adam or the kids had the power at the beginning. Okay, they had the power because they were the ones who had control over the man. They were able to limit the information he was receiving. They were the only ones who were able to get him help, the only ones who knew he was in there, presumably. And so they hold the power over him. Now, where does he lose that power? He loses that power when the old man in the well calls Adam by his name. All right, that there, immediately, as soon as that happens, the kids are no longer anonymous. And Adam is not. You can feel vulnerable, and if you start to feel vulnerable, that means you are starting to feel weak, and you've weakened, and you have lost some of your power. So you can either focus specifically on Adam, or you could say, when the man calls out all the kids' names, or when Adam tells the man all the kids' names, and then the man knows all the kids' names. So one thing of interest, though, is that the kids never actually completely lose their power, and they do gain back some of the power that they lost when they stopped talking to the man. So they do have the upper hand the whole time, but it kind of, goes from super, super strong to, a little bit less and then back to strong. Okay, so how students tended to lose points on this question was they mistakenly identified the man as the one who had the power. The man did not have the power. The man attempted to gain some power when he called the kids by their name, but he did not have the power because he was stuck in a well. And not writing in complete sentences. That one's very, very common. You're going to see again and again as to why people lost points. All right, question number 3. A theme is a lesson that the story is trying to get across to the reader. Consider question 2 and tell me a theme of this story. So one thing about theme, there's more than one theme. All right, you want to phrase it as a lesson. It's a question that a lot of people struggled on. So it's important to realize that this is a lesson. It's something that the story is trying to teach you, so you need to phrase it like a lesson. Like this is something you need to learn. For example, it might be something like there is power in anonymity. So being anonymous gives you some power because you can do things and people don't know who you are. It is very easy to lose power. We saw how quickly Adam lost just a little bit of power by Wendy making one small little slip up. Very, very easy slip up, but right then and there, power is gone. You are not always in control of your own power. Right? Adam's the one telling the story. He seems to have the most power, but it wasn't him who caused him to lose. It was Wendy. So you're not always in control of your own power. Some other themes that were mentioned that were very good, not necessarily in relation to question 2, which is fine. I was just kind of leading you back to question 2 to kind of help you out if you were stuck. But some other things that people brought up. People can be influenced to do bad things because it makes them feel powerful, especially when they're in a group. Right? The kids all influenced each other. They all kind of pressured each other. They didn't explicitly say it or pressure, but it was one of those, like, everybody kind of looked at each other and it was said without saying kind of thing. And there is a psychological phenomenon known as groupthink where this does happen. So individually, these kids might not have made this decision, but the group influenced them and it makes them feel powerful, and so they made the decisions they did. Another very, very common theme, children can be cruel. All right, your theme can really be as simple as that. How people lost points on this one, you did not phrase it in a way that was stating a lesson. Just explained what happened in the story, not what the actual lesson that was being taught was. Or you did not write in complete sentences. All right. Question number 4. There is a connection that can be drawn to the idea that children treat the man like a pet. Explain how this simile is true. An example is that the only food the man gets is what they give him, much like an animal in a cage. So one thing they do is they toy with him, right? They kind of, they tease him, they tell him help's coming, they're not really getting help, so they toy with him. Another thing they do is they try and guess his name, and then they decide to name him kind of like what you would a pet. I mean, his name is the man, but still, multiple people mentioned this idea that they were giving him a name like a pet, and I agree with that. They leave when they get bored. They got hot the one day, and they kind of had enough talking to him and not talking to him, so they got up and went to the theater. They got bored of their pet. Kids all the time, especially young kids. I want a pet, I want a pet, I want a pet. And then they get one as soon as the novelty wears off. Well, now, I'm kind of bored, so I'm going to go do something else. They don't really have a normal conversation with him. It's them asking questions, him asking questions, and then just kind of going back and forth. They don't have an actual talk of like, why are you down there? What's your life like? What's going on? They just ask questions and nobody really answers. And the only thing that the man knows about is what the children choose to tell them. So, hey, yes, I'm going to go get you help. Well, the man has no choice but to believe that because that's the only place where he's getting his information from is from the kids. And I mean, pets that you have, hamsters, bunnies in a cage. I mean, the only reference they have to the world is what you're showing them. So, yeah, that one might be a little bit of a stretch, but I mean, it's still there, and people brought it up, and it's a good one. The next one I'm going to show you is a student insight that I found particularly strong and insightful. I was very, very impressed with this statement. And it says they treated him in a manner that they cared, but their I think that should say intention showed that they didn't, almost as humans do when they see stray animals. And I like this because it's this idea that you see a stray animal and you're like, oh, the poor thing, and and you feel bad and you act like you care, but then how many people actually, pick up that pet and, save the pet and make the pet a part of their home and take it home and adopt it, or, take it to the Humane Society and see if they can adopt it and things like that. Or how many people just kind of, well, maybe he's just lost, he'll find his way home. So here, the intention showed that they really didn't care at all, because they're just, oh, here's some food, oh, hey, hi, how you doing, what's your name, but that's it. The other one that I found very, very insightful, it says, in my opinion, I believe the children treated him worse than a pet. A pet would insinuate there was some affection for the man. The term animal in a cage does represent the situation better. They gave him food and water, but didn't care if he lived or died. He was stuck in that well against his will. And I really, really like this idea that, that no, a pet is not the best connection to be made here, because he's right. A pet is something that you care about, but there's no affection for the man. They're just toying with him, playing with him, and moving on when they get bored. So this one here was, like I said, particularly interesting and insightful. Okay, how some students lost points on this one was they just used the idea about only getting food from the, I should say, kids, or being caged. The example that I had shown up here, they just basically repeated that, maybe not in the exact words, but they said pretty much the same thing. So if that was all they said, and that's all you said, you're not going to get full points for that. And not answering in a complete sentence. Question number 5 says, I never went very close to the lip of the well, or I only came up on my hands and knees so that he couldn't see me, and just as we wouldn't allow him to see us, I know that none of us ever saw the man in the well. What does this quote suggest about the feelings the narrator has about this event now that he or she is looking back on the situation? Because this whole story is a flashback to a time when the narrator was 9 years old. So this was a very tricky question, probably the most tricky question out of all of the questions that I asked you, but, they can't all be easy, so there's going to be tricky ones here and there. All right, so the tone of this is it seems very remorseful, very sad, and with that, it gives us this hint that there's some guilt over the events that transpired. All right, that this person's still thinking about it all these years later. They never saw the man. There might be some regret there, but the tone is what's going to be the hints for that one. But it's still always just the man, and we never saw him. It's just the man. So it keeps him from actually ever being humanized. The man is never ever humanized in the story. He's always just an object, a thing in the well. I mean, like, you could have called the man anything, and it would still be the same. I mean, it reminds me of Romeo and Juliet, where I say, a rose by any other name would still smell sweet. It doesn't matter what it's called. This man, if we called him the thing in the well or the object in the well, it doesn't change the story, because he's never ever humanized. And then that is where we get this guilt and this remorseful, sad tone. All right, so how students would lose points on this question? You did not answer in complete sentences. You just repeated that no, they never saw each other, and that was pretty much the big things there. Okay, number 6. Everyone was there again on the following morning. It was all I could think about during supper the night before, and then the anticipation in the morning over breakfast. My mother was very upset with something at the time. I could hear her weeping at night in her room downstairs, and the stubborn murmur of my father. And the second quote, that night it rained, and I listened to the rain on the roof and my mother sobbing downstairs until I fell asleep. Now, what might these two quotes from the story suggest? Now, what's interesting is on their own, these quotes are not really that significant. But together, there's a very, very strong hint that maybe the adults knew that the man was in the well, and possibly that they even knew who he was. Okay? Because the mother's very upset. Twice we hear of the mother being very upset, and then we hear of the stubborn murmur of her father. Now, a murmur is not a bad thing. A murmur is just a quiet kind of just above a whisper where you can hear the tone of a voice, but being stubborn, it sounds like the father is not, it's almost like he would be saying, I'm imagining him saying something like, we had to do it, or it had to be done. There's nothing that can be changed. You can't say anything. You can't do anything. You got to let it be. So I can imagine him saying that very quietly to the mother so that the children don't overhear. But together with the mother crying, the father murmuring, and multiple times this being stated, there's a very, very strong hint that the adults knew the man in the well and that they possibly knew who he was. Now, we never get a full, complete answer to this question. It's kind of reading between the lines, but because it is there twice, then we can have some confidence that that is the case. Now, what I want to stress is this is not the parents are getting a divorce. The parents are arguing. The father is abusing the mother. Okay? I had a lot of people talking about that. Just because the mother's upset and the father's being stubborn does not automatically mean this. Okay? So the hints here are for the adults knowing that the man was in the well and that possibly knowing who he was. All right, so how to lose points on this question. You had the wrong interpretation, or surprise, surprise, you didn't answer the question in complete sentences. All right, one's coming up again. Question number 7. The story never gives any indication as to why the man is in the well. What are some reasons that you can think of as to why the man is in the well? This question here, you got to be as creative as you want it to be, because I've accepted pretty much anything that would be considered reasonable. And some of you had some really interesting ideas of how the man ended up in the well. Okay, there's a million of them. Now, they can all stem from basically the idea he fell in. Some of you said he was cleaning and he fell in. Some of you said he had been drinking and he fell in. Some of you said he was leaning over to try and get some water and fell in. Whatever it was, he fell in. Some people said maybe he tried to commit suicide by jumping in or by allowing himself to fall in. Completely plausible. There's the idea that he was put in there as a form of punishment. Once again, completely reasonable and completely possible. We don't know. Maybe he was pushed in. Okay. Maybe. Now, this one was interesting. This one, I haven't had really students bring this up before, but quite a few people were bringing this up, and it is a really, really interesting way to look at it. It was that maybe he was a predator laying in wait. Now, I'm not 100% sure how much support there really is for this idea in the story, but it is one that I'm going to go back and I'm going to look and see if you could support this idea that he was a predator and not just somebody stuck in a well trying to get help from these kids. But basically, I took any variation of these reasons, anything that you gave me along the lines of, this is how he could have ended up in the well. Number 8. Are the children's actions in the story cruel? Based on your own experiences, do you believe children can often be cruel to others? Explain your answer and include why you think it is that children can be so cruel or why children are not cruel. So, biggest thing here, you got 2 questions to answer. You could have said, yes, the children in the story were cruel. They left a man to die in a well. They told the man they were getting help, didn't go get him help. They lied to him. They, gave him just enough food and water to kind of survive a few more days, but still never got help and then just, left him. Or you could say, no, the children's actions were not cruel because they didn't know any better. They're children, or maybe they were scared. Some of you brought up the idea of stranger danger. And I'll take that. I mean, that does make sense. I mean, maybe there is a level of fear there of like, what do we do if we let this man out? Are we meant to? We don't know who he is. Is he going to do something bad if we let him out? Are we going to get in trouble? We don't know. So I would take that. So second part of the question, you could say yes, children are cruel. Children can be cruel to the others. Okay? Because right from really, really, really young ages, children know the difference between right and wrong. I mean, society, parents, family, everybody teaches children the difference between right and wrong. You know what you're meant to do, you know what you're not meant to do, because when you do something you're not meant to do, whether it's your parents, whether it's society, in some way or form, you get a negative reaction. And so you learn that it is not something that would be acceptable. Children are also cruel because, knowing the difference between right and wrong, they still test boundaries. That is what children do. They do it all the time. They test the boundaries to see how far they can push, how far they can go to the line before it, goes over into, no, this is wrong, you're in trouble. And so they will do things purposely knowing they're wrong, purposely knowing they're cruel, not necessarily understanding the consequences of their actions, but knowing that they shouldn't be doing them just to see what might happen because they're children and they're curious. This one here was another student response that I really liked. They said, yes, I believe that children can be cruel since many times they get too caught up in themselves and don't care about others. Sometimes they may not realize that they're being cruel, and other times, as I believe this is the case in the story, they do realize. You can tell the children in the story know that they're being cruel because all of them began feeling guilty or ran away. And this is very, very true. Right? They all feel some level of guilt, and there is a sense that they all know that what they're doing is wrong. Okay, so you could also argue that no, children are not cruel. All right? Either one was, once again, was your opinion. You just had to explain yourself. So no, children are not cruel because they don't know any better. Kids are innocent, and sometimes somebody brought up a really good point that, as parents, you try and shelter your kids from the cruel realities of the world, but by doing that, sometimes they don't know any better. So what they do is not necessarily cruel. They usually don't have enough experience with life to understand treating people as you want to be treated. Another student response, another very, very valid point. It takes time to learn and understand and gain that empathy of realizing I want to be treated a certain way, so I'm going to treat others a certain way. And children sometimes are too young to have experienced that. So how to lose points on this question? You did not address both parts of the question. There's a big one. Anytime you see multiple question marks in a question, answer them all. Did not explain themselves. So if you wrote something down but you didn't explain it, you didn't add enough detail, or you did not answer for incomplete sentences. All right, almost to the end here. We got number 9. Why is it easier for the children in the story to be unkind when the man doesn't know who they are? Simply comes down to nothing can come back to them. All right, they can't get in trouble. The man doesn't know who they are. The man can't get out of the well and go try and find their parents and say, hey, your kid did this. They can't. Now, there's also this idea here of plausible deniability. All right. That is an example would be like a firing squad, right? You line up 10 people with a gun and everybody shoots, but one person doesn't have a bullet in their gun. They have a blank, and so they never tell anybody who that is. So in your mind, you can say, well, I was the one who had the blank, so I didn't actually shoot the person. Here, well, he never said my name. He didn't ask me for help, so he wasn't talking to me. There's this idea of plausible deniability if they never ever tell the man their names. Oh, he wasn't talking to me, he was talking to you. Why were you so mean? Why didn't you go get him help? And so there's that. Man will never ever be able to accuse them. It also keeps them from having a normal human interaction which would require a normal human response. Because a normal human response to somebody stuck in a well crying for help, saying, please, can you go get your parents and get a ladder and help me out of here, would be to go get the ladder and get them out of there. So if you never ever exchange names and you never ever talk about anything or get to know each other or meet each other, well, right there, you're not really starting out with a normal human interaction. So then if you don't have a normal human response, that kind of follows along. And so it makes sense that the children then are not going to go get help because, once again, the man's just an object. He's just a thing. Allows them to walk away and not feel as guilty because they can always deny, no, I wasn't there. What are you talking about? No, that never happened. And the other thing is they're never ever going to have to deny anyway because the man is not going to be around to tell the story to say, hey, these kids did this. So they can use it as an excuse to wipe the memory from their mind, which we know they can't because he's still thinking about this many years later, but, the possibility is there. So how you lost points on this question. All right, bet you $1 million. Not answering a complete sentence is going to be on there. All right, there. All right. And you did not explain yourself. Okay, didn't have enough detail, didn't explain what you're talking about. Number 10 says pick a section of the story, the beginning, the middle, or the end, or a major event, and rewrite it from the perspective of the man in the well. Biggest thing I can say about this is, wow, had some absolutely amazing answers. There's 2 particular answers I want to share with you, but there's some really, really, really good answers that you guys gave. I was very, very impressed. So, period 5 had this response here, student period 5, and if you know it's you and you want to put your name on the comments, or if you know it's your friend and you want to put their name up, please feel free and give this person recognition. I didn't want to call these people out in front of everybody, just in case they were shy and they didn't want everybody knowing their name. But the 2 of you who it is, you'll know. Okay, so this person is rewriting the end of the story. It says, it was getting late and I was getting tired, and I was losing interest in the children because they just stayed quiet when I asked them a question. I could hear them get up slowly and decided to ask them a few last questions because I could see the rain clouds approaching with the little light that was left in the sky. I asked them why they didn't tell anyone about me and that I was in the well, or if they even wanted to tell anyone. I don't think they meant to be cruel. I think they were just doing what they thought was right. I'm an old man in a well, after all. They didn't answer, of course. I decided to just go to sleep and hope that the well didn't flood too much. So very, very emotional, great ending from the man's perspective on that one. This next one is from period 1, and they took a very, very different turn to the story, and they went with the man being a predator and being evil, and so this one's just very creative and interesting. It says, I know there are kids that play down here near this well. I had a thought in my mind. Maybe I could fool one of them into helping me out of it. I clipped hooks in between the rocks of the well on my way down, carefully sliding down on the rope. I waited for the children, and when they came, I yelled out to them, God, get me out! I've been here for days. After a moment, I yelled again, Go get a ladder! Get help! I could feel the uneasiness in the air. They started asking me questions that I knew I couldn't answer if I was trying to get away with this, so I stayed silent. I only repeated the question I hoped would eventually get one of them to help me. Have they gone for help? They ran away and didn't come back until the next morning. I'd have to try again then. So like I say, very dark turn on this, but very, very interesting, very creative, and very, very well done. So, I am putting the timestamps in the comments. If you watched the whole video, made it the whole way through, awesome, great job. Congratulations, I guess, because I think this one's going to be one of my longer ones. But hopefully it gave you a little bit more insight into some of the questions, kind of what the story was about, what we're looking for, and what was going on with that. If you have any questions about any of it, please email me, send me a message through, Google Classroom on the comments there, whatever. just get in touch with me if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to answer anything you need an answer to. So, hope y'all have a great day. And I will be posting everything for next week, probably Sunday night or Monday morning. But we're going to jump back to a story next week. And not quite as dark or creepy or shocking as this one, but still interesting nonetheless. So, hope y'all have a great time, great day. I will talk to you all later.